I want to take an opportunity to talk a little bit about Purica curcumin and curcumin BDM30. BDM30 is a technology that was developed at Biologic Pharma Medical Research, a research organization founded by me with an objective to use mainstream or allopathic pharmaceutical drug protocols, drug research protocols, to study botanicals and other nutraceutical compounds and determine mechanistically how they work so that we can optimize and make them more effective, more reliable, and create standardizations for them, or standards for them, that are reliable from batch to batch. Now, curcumin BDM30 is a result of this expansive research that has taken in excess of 15 years to develop. And basically, you have to understand where they stem from. It stemmed from a time when we didn't know much about each of the curcuminoids found in curcumin. Curcumin is made up of multiple curcuminoids, as we'll see in a moment. And what I did was go in and map the pharmacology of each of the curcuminoids so that we could determine what is common about them, but also what is different about them, so that then we can redesign the curcumin extract and then create standardized variations of them that are reliable from batch to batch, reliable in terms of now this novel activity that we've discovered in BDM30. So BDM stands for bis-dimethoxycurcumin, which is one of the curcuminoids that you'll see is very different than the regular curcumin in the marketplace. Purica curcumin utilizes BDM30 as the main active, and here's how different it is. Here's a conflict of interest statement that tells you my position, and I am the discoverer, I am the owner of the patent, and so I want to make sure that that bias is made clear when I'm describing this technology. Purica curcumin is made with BDM30, for which we have published studies that demonstrate how it works, why it's different, and how effective it is. Now, typically in a curcumin product, an extract, you'll see that the regular turmeric is approximately 6% curcumin, and when we extract curcumin out of it at 100% purity, usually it'll range between 90 and 97% purity in most of our extracts. So that's why we see curcumin 95%. Problem is that within this curcumin 95, there are three curcuminoids, three of them, that will vary in proportion from batch to batch. Curcumin 1 is one of the more commonly known actives, but you'll see that curcumin 3 down here will only exist at approximately 0.2 to 2 to 2.5% concentration. So it rarely participates in the pharmacology for curcumin. We know curcumin has general anti-inflammatory activity, which is not bad, it's fairly effective. But the interesting thing is that the research has shown that curcumin 3, that third one that is typically only in very low concentrations, can activate different systems in the body and also inhibit, that means stop, one particular protein that's key in the inflammatory process, and the other two curcuminoids of the three cannot touch it. So keep in mind, most curcumin 95% extracts have only 1%, maximum 2% naturally of the BDM concentration. So bis-dimethoxycurcumin only exists roughly at 1 to 2% concentration, therefore it never participates in the activity of a regular curcumin product. But BDM30 has curcumin bis-dimethoxycurcumin activity raised to 30% in terms of the concentration or composition of the curcumin. Instead of 1%, with BDM30, it's raised to 30%. What we see here is that the regular standard curcumin will have a curcumin 1 level between 50 and 80, 10 and 20 for curcumin 2, and about 2% for curcumin 3. And with BDM30 technology, you'll see that this raises up to 30%. Why is this important? It's important because we know that curcumin 3 can actually inhibit MSK1. This is a kinase that activates certain compounds in the body. NF-kappa B is the actual one of the transcription factors that it activates, which make then cytokines that are involved in the inflammatory response. What this means is, ultimately, if we boil down the activity to a very simple message, is that BDM30 has 60 times more BDM than standard curcumin 95%. It has a 1,200 times more BDM, or bis-dimethoxycurcumin, than regular turmeric. It has an ORAC value. Now this is a key feature. It has an ORAC value that is approximately 560,000 versus regular curcumin only being about 90,000. So 560,000 versus 90,000. And again, this is an important thing to highlight, is that regular curcumin with that 1% or even 2% curcumin 3 or bis-dimethoxycurcumin will only inhibit the translocation of NF-kappa B. So it inhibits one protein that's critical in the escalation of inflammation, whereas BDM30 inhibits two proteins, which is NF-kappa B as well as MSK1. By inhibiting those two instead of one, you then activate the anti-inflammatory activity more quickly, within hours instead of days. You improve on the intensity of the anti-inflammatory activity. You actually have an ORAC value, meaning an antioxidant activity that's thousands of times higher than regular curcumin or other antioxidants. You've got an improved also stability because of this antioxidant activity of the other curcuminoids in serum, which means that the survival of curcumin in your blood is enhanced because you have a protective feature of this curcumin 3 or bis-dimethoxycurcumin BDM at elevated levels. Now, what does this mean in the overall context of activity? You've got Purica curcumin, and these bars, I'm not going to go into the details, but each one of these boxes represents cytokines that are involved in inflammatory activity. So anytime you're injured or the cells are triggered to deliver an inflammatory response, what happens is the cells at a genetic level will begin to produce these cytokines. TNF-alpha is one of them, IL-16, IL-2, IL stands for interleukin, and these bars represent the height of activity that you find for each of these cytokines. And underneath we have the different drugs that we tested to determine how these drugs affect the activity of these different cytokines. And we have ibuprofen, aspirin, and then I have covered up two different curcumins in the marketplace today that are quite common, that are used as trademarked curcumins. And these are apparently the flagship curcumins, so-called, in the marketplace, but we affect the inhibition. That means we stop the production of these cytokines at with BDM30 and BDM50. You can see at each time they're in the middle at 0 points versus these other curcumins and ASA, aspirin, or ibuprofen, and other NSAID being ineffective in comparison to how effective BDM30 is. And again, Purica curcumin is made exclusively with BDM30 as the active. And if you see here, this graph shows that ASA and ibuprofen are not nearly as effective as curcumin BDM30. What these bars show is the fold increase in anti-inflammatory activity associated with the inhibition of these key cytokines. TNF-alpha up here, interleukin-1 beta, interleukin-6. Interleukin is a common systemic cytokine that's induced in inflammatory response, and we see that BDM30 has about 14 times a more effective activity on inhibiting, 14 times better inhibition of these cytokines over aspirin and ibuprofen. It's very effective and worth your while trying. Thank you.